Remember back in the day, Johnny Carson being one of my favorite shows. And he would always do his Karnak impression. And if I was going to do a Karnak before setting up this series, I'd have the envelope up against my head and I'd say Marty Turco, Tuukka Rask, Roberto Luongo. And then inside of the envelope, it would say, name 3 goaltenders who've played for my 3 favorite teams that never got a fair shake about their playoff record. Because anytime Rask has troubles, he gets a lot of flack. Marty Turco retired as a guy who I kept reading. Well, he couldn't win in the playoffs. He played for teams that couldn't score. And Luongo, that's of course one of the lasting things for Luongo is, well, in the playoffs he wasn't really that good. No, Vancouver's defense against Chicago was absolute hot garbage. The amount of times they could just tee it up right in front of the net. The defense against Chicago was not good. And so I'm not going to say he played great because he didn't during certain series. But Luongo, boy, when he came in 06-07, my favorite photo, and if I can use it for the thumbnail for this one, I will. I'll track it down. Is the 06-07 Canucks playoff team, their playoff roster, and it's an completely empty picture except Luongo on the corner of the bench, down in one corner. Because without Roberto Luongo, the Canucks do not make the playoffs that year. He willed them into the playoffs. He came over from Florida, and he had never played in the playoffs before, and it was quite obvious right from the beginning he was going to drag the Canucks there. On the other side, you've got the Dallas Stars, a team that can't score and plays well defensively. So Dallas was 50, 25, and 7. They were third in the Central. 226 goals for, 21st overall. 197 goals against, second overall. Vancouver's first in the Pacific, 49, 26, and 7. 222 goals, which was 22nd, which is nice to see all those twos. 201 goals against, which was 5th. Now, because Vancouver's first in their division, Dallas is third in their division, despite the fact that Dallas has 2 more points than Vancouver. Vancouver has home ice advantage. And that would prove to be a little more important in this series than other series I've talked about. And of course, Vancouver would lose in the second round against the Anaheim Ducks, who had Niedermayer and Pronger, which was a cheat code back then. And but this series was excellent. And I remember game 1 as a game that I almost fell asleep watching this, and then I had to go to work the next morning. I had to work at 5:50 in the morning after staying up till really late to watch this one. So, 2007. The Vancouver Canucks have trouble scoring. Dallas has trouble scoring. It is not a surprise necessarily that these teams would struggle to score in this series. But the reason why wasn't the teams on the ice, their lack of scoring. It was the goaltending. The goaltending was great. But it didn't show early in this one. First period, Daniel Sedin scores from Henrik Sedin and Taylor Pyatt at 4:20. This is when Pyatt was seen as the guy who was going to play with the Sedins. We all remember that. Power play goal then by Brendan Morrow from Ribeiro and Sador at 5:28. It's 1-1 after 1. Second period. Vancouver. Power play goal by Matthias Ohlund from Krychek and Naslund at 6:26. And then Trevor Daley would tie it up from Morrow and Louis Eriksson at 10 minutes. And then Marcus Naslund scored unassisted at 13:47 to give Vancouver back the lead. They kept getting the lead. So we go to the third period. Vancouver makes it a 2-goal lead. Brian Smolinski, a guy they got as a rental that I had really hoped they'd hold on to, and they didn't. Salo and Linden got the assists at 7:36. Antti Miettinen then scores from Hagman and Jussi Jokinen at 8:31. And then Nagy would tie it from Miettinen and Zubov at 13:46. So it's 4-4. It's going into overtime. First overtime, no goals. Second overtime, no goals. Third overtime, no goals. There are chances at both ends of the ice. But as these overtime games get longer, as you get into that third and that fourth overtime, you're going to see the chances at the start, and you're going to see them near the end. And in between, it's just basically a bunch of guys on the ice who kind of want to just curl up in a ball and go to sleep. And in the fourth overtime, it looked like we were going to go to a fifth. I was getting all ready for a fifth overtime. I was like, holy crap, this is going to go to 2 in the morning. And I was thinking about people on the East Coast with this too, because there's no way they stayed through all this. There's no way. Henrik Sedin would score to end it from Daniel Sedin and Matthias Ohlund at 18:06. And I remember a huge scream from me when the Canucks scored, because Luongo saves 72 out of 76. Turco saves 51 out of 56. Luongo stands on his head and probably felt like he'd been standing on his head for about 6 hours after this one was done. Vancouver's up 1-0 in what was basically 2+ games in Game 1. Game 2, Dallas they show some fight back. It's Halpern scoring from Zubov and Barnes 24 seconds into game 2. That's the only scoring in the first. And the second is Joel Lundqvist. It's Joel Lundqvist gets a goal from Modano and Barnes at 45 seconds of the second period. And Dallas would ride that out. And they'd ride it out with Marty Turco making save after save after save for a shutout. 35 saves on 35 shots. Luongo saves 25 out of 27. Luongo's now faced over 100 shots in 2 games. Though technically, like I said, they played 2 games here, so it's kind of like 3. So now we go to Dallas. Dallas at home, can't score. This is a storyline for Dallas that has just been driving me nuts for, it feels like decades, because it's been decades. No scoring in the first, second period. Dallas gets on the board first. It's Stu Barnes from Robida and Boucher at 13:09. Boulis would tie it from Hansen and Morrison at 5:18. Jan Boulis drove me insane most of that season, to be honest. I've got to be completely honest. Then a first overtime goal, not fourth overtime. It's Pyatt from Smolinski and Linden at 7:47. Loved Smolinski as a Canuck. Luongo, 29 saves on 30 shots in the win. Turco, 35 saves on 37 shots in the loss. Both goaltenders stealing the show again, but Vancouver up 2-1. Vancouver, again, in this game, they show, hey, we can do this. First period, no scoring. Second period, no scoring. But in the third, it's Vancouver that breaks through. It's Matthias Olin from Smolinski and Pyatt. I've mentioned I wish they'd kept Smolinski, right? 9:46 into the third period, they scored. Sador then scored from Ladislav Nagy at 12:29. And then it's Linden from Willie Mitchell and Taylor Pyatt at 14:29. So Vancouver's up 3-1. They win that one 2-1. Luongo saves 26 out of 27. Turco saves 27 out of 29. Both goaltenders are the story. Game 5 in Vancouver. Vancouver can win this. They can win this. Dallas proves to have some fight in them. Or, more to the point, Turco does. Turco and the defense in front of him. I'm going to give credit where it's due. Dallas played a very solid defensive game. There's no scoring through the first, the second, or the third. So we go to overtime. It's Brendan Morrow from Zubov and Ribeiro at 6:22, which silences a very rambunctious and boisterous Canucks crowd who felt some excitement that Luongo's first time in the playoffs, and this is going to happen. The Canucks are eventually going to be Cup champions. I believed at that time that the Canucks, with Luongo, at some point had to win a Stanley Cup. At some point they had to. And then we go into Game 6, which is in Dallas. So Vancouver with another chance to end it. Dallas says no. Power play goal by Mike Modano from Zubov and Ribeiro at 3:05. There's no scoring in the second. And in the third, it's Jeff Halpern that adds the insurance goal at 7:22 unassisted. And so Dallas wins it 2-0 over Vancouver. Vancouver hasn't scored a goal now since 14:29 of the third period of Game 4. So it's been a while. Remember, there's an overtime here. They're shut out, so that's 66 minutes, 126 minutes. About 130 minutes between goals. Luongo saves 28 out of 30. He's got to be feeling like he's back in Florida. The team's not scoring. He's putting up great numbers, but it doesn't matter. And Turco, again, faces only 21 shots. So 21 save shutout here, 21 save shutout here. Dallas is doing what they have to. They're trapping this game. They're trapping the Vancouver Canucks, and now they go to Game 7, which is in Vancouver. First period, it's Joel Lundqvist that gets on the board for Dallas. He gets a goal from Halpern and Barnes at 16:32. It's 1-0 Dallas after the first. And watching this, I thought, are Vancouver really going to blow a 3-1 lead again? They had done this against Minnesota in 2003. I did that video a couple days ago. And now look like they might be ready to do it again. Second period. Power play goal by Henrik Sedin from Daniel Sedin at 15:12. Ties it up. This is before the Sedins get to that era of great scoring that they would have for those, I want to say 3 seasons, approximately 3 years, that they had the really, really solid scoring numbers. They weren't quite there yet. And then in the third period is a power play goal by Linden from Oland and Henrik Sedin at 7 minutes. So the Vancouver Canucks get a lead, and they hold it. And the other 2 goals are empty netters. So while it looks like an ugly score, it really isn't. First, it's Pyatt from Morrison at 18:57, and then it's Smolinski from Linden and Boulis at 19:13. Turco saved 28 out of 30. Luongo only faced 20 shots. Saves 19. So Vancouver looks at games 5 and 6 and goes, hey, we can play that kind of style too. And they shut things down. So the Vancouver Canucks emerge from this one victorious. Again, they would lose in 5 against the Anaheim Ducks. And there were two reasons. One, Anaheim was ready to win a Stanley Cup. And two, you have to wonder how much energy the Canucks expended in this 7-game series that goes to overtime 3 times, and one of those overtimes went to the 4th overtime. They played a lot of hockey, and it was a tough series. And when they had a 3-1 lead, they made it hard on themselves, and it took till 7 to get the other team out, the other team being Dallas. As a fan of both teams, I appreciated this series a lot more than the 94 series where these teams clashed and Vancouver took them out in 5. It really wasn't much of a series, that one. It was pretty obvious right from the get-go that Vancouver was going to win that series. This one was far more hotly contested, and Dallas showed a lot of fight. And it was a series where I thought there was a lot of mutual respect between the teams when it was over. Stu Barnes led Dallas in scoring in that series, which shows they didn't have the scoring. A goal and 3 assists. Zubov with 4 helpers. Halpern 2 goals and an assist. Morrow had 2 goals and an assist. Mike Ribeiro had 3 assists. Modano with a goal and an assist. And Lindros played 3 games. No scoring for him. So this was Lindros' only year in a Dallas jersey, and he only played the 3 games in the series. Turco was 3-4 in this series with a .952 save percentage in the loss. On the Vancouver side, Linden 2 goals, 3 assists. Pyatt 2 goals, 3 assists. Olin 2 goals and 2 helpers. Henrik Sedin 2 goals, 2 helpers. Smolinski also had 2 goals and 2 assists. Daniel Sedin a goal and 2 assists. And Jan Bulis, who drove me nuts, a goal and an assist, 2 points. And for a player to drive me nuts, it means I know they have the talent, and I'm just looking for the consistency, and that's where I was with Bulis. Luongo goes 4-3 in the series with a .950 save percentage. So he has a .950 save percentage, and it's not as good as the .952 that was sported by Turco, because both goaltenders played fantastic that series, and yet at the end of this series, I still heard, well, Turco can't win in the playoffs, so yeah, it's too bad. It's not Turco. It was not Turco. Turco was not the problem. Same as for a lot of the time with Luongo, he was the one that dragged the Canucks into the playoffs, dragged them through this series, and eventually they get a victory. Because outside of game 1, where it was 5-4 in quadruple overtime, every other game, the losing team has 1 or 0 goals. And the winning team had 2 or 1 goal, except for this one where you have 4, and 2 of them are empty netters. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. I know there are other series from 2007 people wanted me to cover. This one kind of gets shunted aside because people remember that series against Anaheim. And I thought this series was fascinating. Again, there may be some bias because I cheer for Vancouver and Dallas, but I did think this was a great series and that both goaltenders were absolutely fantastic. And at some point, I'll do another dive onto Marty Turco's career and discuss how Dallas just wasn't good enough in front of him, more than it was a matter of him not being good enough in games that mattered. But we'll get into that. Thank you guys so much for all your support along the way. I'm very, very happy with the growth this channel's shown, despite everything that's going on, and despite not having hockey at this point. So the channel's getting close to 138,000 subscribers. I'd like to thank everybody who's hit like and subscribe along the way. And remember, as I've been saying over the last 7 weeks now, stay home if you can. Stay safe out there if you can't. And we'll all get through this. We'll all figure this out. It'll all get done. This all get better. It's going to. I do believe that. That's not just a line I'm throwing into videos. And thank you guys for all your support along the way, to everybody on Patreon that supports the channel as well, and people who've supported along the way. And for people who wondered on other series I might cover, and are thinking, oh, well, why didn't he cover that one? Don't worry. Once I'm done, once I'm up to 2019, we're going to go right back and start over again from 1981 all the way through again. I may be able to just keep this series going and then also start throwing in rivalries as well, and start doing rivalry videos where I talk about different rivalries along the way, and that could be interesting as well. So there you go. Thanks again for all your support and for allowing me to be able to do this and to provide this content for you fine people, and I will talk to you again soon.